Moscow has called the strikes in Syria an act of aggression against a sovereign state. Joining me now from London is Alexander Nekrassov. He's a former advisor to the Russian government. Well, we know that the Russian president's office called the strike a significant blow to Russian-U.S. relationships and also a violation of international law. That's the official reaction. But give us a sense of how people in Russia are reacting to the strike by the U.S. What are you hearing?
Well, first of all, I think that we should understand that, immediately after this attack, the statements coming from all over the place are mostly targeted at the domestic audiences. We've seen, for example, Donald Trump explaining this attack to the American people and sort of giving it as a spin, saying that it's in the national interests of the United States, and so on and so on. The Russian reaction was strong and fierce, but it was expected because the Russian audience was expecting the leadership to take a strong position towards this attack. Now, as regards the others, it all depended on how national governments positioned themselves towards this whole issue. But I think personally that most Russians would look at it as a case of opportunism. First of all, I have spoken to some Russian journalists and observers, and they say that the main point is that America had no evidence at all. There was no investigation, there was no independent presence of any experts, observers, and so on. So to conclude that this is Syria is behind this, the Assad's regime was behind this chemical attack, that was opportunism. Secondly, this attack brings a new dangerous dimension to the whole Syrian crisis. Because now, basically, we find ourselves in a situation when one of the countries decides for itself, without the UN, without consulting anybody else, whether it sees fit to interfere militarily and punish Syria for doing this or that. That is a very dangerous thing, and I think that has been pointed out by some Russian diplomats and officials during the debates.
Let me ask you this. We know that the Secretary of State for the United States, Rex Tillerson, planning to go to Moscow. There was a quote today from a spokeswoman from the foreign ministry there in Moscow saying, let him come to Moscow and tell what strange things they did. How awkward will these meetings be between Tillerson and the Russian leaders, given what just happened?
Well, I think there will be a bit of frostiness, of course, serious frostiness during that meeting. And I expect that Rex Tillerson is a big expert on Russia. So I suspect he anticipates some tough words initially. But I think, to be honest with you, both Russia and America realize that they need to cooperate. There is no way that the crisis in Syria and beyond Syria can be resolved without this cooperation. And even when we saw this dramatic decision by the Russian military to stop the memorandum of cooperation between the two air forces, avoiding a possible accident, I think this will be revived after a while. We are just looking, obviously, at the fallout immediately after this particular incident. But let me tell you another interesting thing, the cynical view of some of the Russians, why Trump actually did it. Now, the feeling in some circles in Moscow is that Trump has been under great pressure from all sides of the political equation, from the Democrats, from the Republicans, from all the others. He was accused of being very friendly with Russia. He was accused of actually too much friendliness with Russia. So by doing this, he basically resolved his domestic issue as well, because suddenly you notice that all the criticism has subsided. And even the fiercest critics of President Trump suddenly started saying, well, we support him, we understand. Now, I'm not saying that it is a direct link between his position and the Syrian crisis, but there is a hint of this sort of opportunism which some of the Russian observers have noted.
We will leave it there. Alexander Nekrassov, always a delight talking to you from London. Thanks.